Story 1. Don't play the psychic knock game. It was Thursday night, and David's dad was working. Naturally, at the prospect of finding ours was on a Friday night unsupervised, my friends and I were drawn to David's house like moths into fire. We are all 17 years old. Before we played, we were beset with that uncheckable, idealist eth of youth. Nothing could touch us, we would live forever. The psychic knock game broke this belief, among other ideals. Nobody believed it was real. The four of us had performed a dozen of these rituals before, too little results. Our little Scooby-Doo club consisted of me, my boyfriend, David, Donna, and Mike, smoking a bowl and poking around the internet for sinister games. Play was just what we did for kicks. The only thing any of them ever actually did was make our skin crawl at the implication of what if, effectively making us jump at unexpected sounds and non-aggressive shadows. Everyone's played Bloody Mary, but nobody expects to actually see her in the mirror. In our world of warning labels, the only thrill left that you can find is the thrill of ignoring them. We were crowded in the living room, scrolling through YouTube. On David's smart TV, Donna had queued up a video that was supposed to be unsettling. It wasn't. The caption on the video read, "Japanese girl suicide picture urban legend." Allegedly, this girl had painted a picture of herself as a suicide note. Donna told us it was really popular in Korea and got spread around a lot. Apparently, if you stared into the painting's eyes for long enough, the girl would smirk and her hair would move. At least, that's what Donna said. Her ritual choices were usually stupid. I didn't TC shit, Donna. This is fucking stupid, and the music is annoying, I told her. She paused the video and glowered at me. I thought you guys would like this. She's pretty hot. David laughed and said, "We don't care what she looks like. This is dumb. I'm with Gage on this one. I don't really want to watch this girl's face not change at all for 5 whole minutes. Thankful that he'd agreed with me. We exchanged a quiet high five. Donna huffed. Of course you'd side with your stupid boyfriend. At least Mike agrees that she's hot. And then with a touch of the drama, tick melancholy, that was Donna's trademark. She said to herself, her eyes are so sad. Mike giggled and threw a pillow at her. Getting a bit too stoned and giggling was Mike's signature. Here's one. David grinned. He sent the browser command to the TV and opened. Donna groaned. I don't want to read. David read the article for her. It was titled The Psychic Knock Game. There was more to the rules than the post stated. Here are a few that I have come up with. 1 Street. Do not play this game. 2 ND. The person on the other side of the door must answer it. 3 Road. If they don't, it will knock on your door instead. None of us even expected the silly Snapchat user in the post to be real, but they are. Go ahead and add them. If you don't believe me, you shouldn't. But you probably will. We all did. Calm _ for 169. Mike giggled. Who should we do it to? David had a gleam of excitement in his eye. My stepdad. What if your mom answers? Donna sigh. It's not real. Gage. David was still grinning. Mom is in Michigan, visiting her sister. That's why we've been here all week. The front door opened and we all jumped. David's sister Morgan doubled over in laughter. Boo. She held her side as she tried to catch her breath. Shouldn't smoke so much. Shit makes you paranoid. She crossed into the darkened kitchen and opened the refrigerator door, bathing her face in the icy light and grabbing a case of their dad's beer. Then, taking her keys from the counter, she headed back to the door. She stopped at the frame before she left and turned back, eyeing David. Better get rid of the smell before Dad gets back. He doesn't want you guys smoking in here. Oh, but you can take his beer to a party, and that's cool. Shut up. She rolled her eyes and, with a cheerful, later nerds, was gone. We heard the snick of the lock behind her, and moments later her headlights shone through the kitchen window as the car backed out of the driveway. I was already wearing a black t-shirt, but David found clothes for the rest. A black sweater that hung loosely on Donna's wiry frame covered her past her shorts, a pair of pants for Emmy. Mike was bigger, so David had improvised with one of his dad's work uniforms, black cotton pants, and a plain black chef's coat. We looked ridiculous. David had stolen his stepdad's cigarettes. We'd been smoking them all night. There were a few left, and he insisted that it was a good enough personal item. I read through the rules again. It's not gonna work. We need a picture of the door. David handed me his phone with a grin. On the screen was a live video feed of the door in question. I looked back at him, confused. He put in one of those camera doorbells a couple weeks ago. Dumb idiot put it behind the pillars so you can't see anything except the door, he giggled. When you walk up to the house, you can't even see it. He's been opening the door to yell at everyone who knocks now for not using the bell. Mike laughed so hard at this that his eyes filled with tears. So perfect. He'll be so mad. Donna pulled up a GTS app and mapped the route to David's parents' house. And so the ritual began. None of us thought it would work. As we passed the energy from one hand to the next, it grew around us. The air felt oppressive hot as beads of sweat soaked my forehead. My breathing grew short and staccatoed. I felt myself growing faint, but calmed at the notion that I was just freaking myself out. Then I looked over to David and realized he wasn't in control of himself any longer. The house rumbled with the energy, and we heard a hissing voice from everywhere around us growl, "YESSSSSS." The candle snuffed itself out. David's eyes were round planets with stars swirling within, white as if held open by invisible fingers. When the candle burst back to life, it burned with the intensity of a soldering flame, hot and blinding. NG white. I didn't want to, but I felt compelled as the others raised their arms to do the same. David's eyes changed to glistening, empty pools of milk. He knocked 3 times into the air in front of him. The candle snuffed itself out again, leaving the room in cavernous darkness, save for the lights of the phones displaying the map and the live feed of the door that his stepdad did not open. We could see him through the glass at the top, heard as he swore on the other side of the closed door through the live video feed. "Son of a bitch, you fucking kid. Knock on this fucking door again. I'll fucking..." His voice trailed off as he moved away. Donna was excited. "Holy shit. Does that mean it worked?" He heard it. Nobody else spoke. Mike aired a blood-curdling scream that rang until Donna covered his mouth. With her hand, she directed all of us with her eyes to be quiet. We stared at each other, not making a sound. Mike was typing something. His eyes shone with panic, like an animal trapped. He handed Donna his phone. "Do you think that's it, the thing? Will it give up like in the doorbell vid?" There was nothing in the doorbell video. Just my stepdad yelling. David whispered. Donna hissed. The door opened slowly, and nobody moved as a dark shadow entered. "Sorry, couldn't get my key to work. Forgo. My dumb phone." Morgan looked at us for a moment as if we had 3 heads each, grabbing her phone out of her room. She then looked directly at Mike. "I know that was you. You scream like a girl." We doubled over in laughter. Slowly, over the course of the next half hour, a sense of ease settled back into the room. "I don't think I've ever heard a dude scream like that," Donna jibed. He threw another pillow at her. "Whatever, dude. That was fucking scary as shit." And he began giggling again. The rest of the night passed without incident, and, for the most part, we forgot about it. I was hanging out with David the following night. It was just the 2 of us. Morgan was staying with a friend, and his dad was off at work again. Bing, our phones chimed in unison. A new Snapchat message. I fiddled with my phone and tapped the notification. Large white letters filled the black screen. "You called me, but no one answered. I will return. One of you must let me in." It was from calm_469. "So stupid," David said, putting his phone down on the coffee table. I felt uneasy. I felt my stomach fall away. David looked startled, but got up saying, "It's probably my dad. The lock sticks." He was almost to the door. "Wait," I shouted. David froze as I walked to the kitchen window and gestured to the empty driveway. "If that's him, how did he get home?" He finished for me. We weren't being loud enough to be heard, but a voice responded, David's dad. "So en, it is why wa fought homie he riena lck saint again. Op and do or f or fought the words sounded new. Whatever was on the other side of the door spoke with the right voice, but the sentence structure was jumbled as though it was saying words it hadn't used before. They were harsh, emphasized wrongly. Bang, this time the message read, "My father's house has many rooms." We grew silent and stared at each other. Bing, many rooms have many doors, the knocking big, and again, this time all around us, thud thud, knock bang thud, pound bang thud thud, knock bang pound. It came from the kitchen cabinets, from the closets, the cupboards, doorways. It rattled the mirrors of the medicine cabinets, and it shook from inside of the refrigerator. It struck everything that had a door, and when that didn't work, it began knocking on walls, the ceiling, and floors. David began hyperventilating. I was in shock. Then, as quickly as it began, it ended. Headlights bathed the front of the house through the kitchen window. Before long, we could hear someone at the low CK muttering, "Goddamn it, hey." His shouts were muffled behind the door. "I can't get my key to never mind." We both heard the sound as the key found its home in the low CK tumblers and snicked the bolt aside. I may have imagined the monstrous, formless shadow that loomed behind him. Imagined the smile full of teeth shining in the dark like box cutter blades. But I can't be sure if I saw anything, because as soon as the door inched to open wide enough, I bolted past David's father and his confused expression and out into the night. I didn't stop running until I was at the door to my own house, but I couldn't bring myself to open it, unsure of whether it was safe. Initially, I'd grazed the handle and couldn't be sure if I'd heard a knock or if it was the beating sound of blood in my ears. Bang, I recognized the line from my years in Sunday school, paraphrased and perverted to serve its sinister purpose. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in to him and I've been calling David for hours now. He isn't picking up ... story to the phone call. Payphones have nearly become extinct in this age, gone the way of VHS tapes and keeping your dinner to yourself rather than sharing it via social media with thousands of others. So when you see one of these rare structures from a simpler past, most often worn away by the elements and stained with graffiti and dirty advertisements, you often think, two homeless people checking for change or embarrassed men wanting a number for a busty escort uses these anymore. It was on my way home from finishing a shift at a very budget version of a KFC that I noticed one. I had taken that some route home most days for the last 3 years and never even registered it being there. But on a slightly colder than usual night in September, as a misty rain started to blur the vision of my glasses, there was the solitary phone box, not decorated with the average drawn on penises and curse words, but disheveled and enameled with black grime nonetheless. I started to walk on, unfazed by the outdated mystery box that had said goodbye for years until it rang. Why did I answer? I don't know. Call it man's innate curiosity, but something got the better of me. Who the hell was calling a random British small-town payphone at 11:07 p.m. at night? Was it one of those pre-recorded cold calls likely, or was it something far more bizarre? For a 22-year-old fried chicken shop worker, Leaf, he wasn't all that exciting, so picking up the receiver to make a Tuesday night a little interesting it was. Well, good evening, I answered cockily and confidently, just in case I stroked it lucky, and it was one of these filthy chat-up lines, crackling, whined, static, maybe a woman's breathing. The connection was too bad to tell. I put the phone down and made my way back to my one-bedroom flat. It rang again. Once more I thought I really had very little going on at home that night. Hello, Jamie speaking. How can I be of assistance on this dreary night? I answered. Oh, hi. Sorry about the last call. The signal is really bad here. A girl, an American girl. What sounded like a cute American girl. British accents aren't all that sexy, so I just presume, no problem. So what up? I said, for some reason, my internal voice reminding me why I'm single. Oh, nothing much, just bored. You said your name was Jamie, right? I'm Charlotte. Great to eat. Well, not really meet, but great to talk to you. The voice at the other end of the line stated gleefully, the crackling and the wind still slightly present in the background. Same to you, I guess. Just one question, though. Why the hell are you calling this pay phone? Oh, silly me. Here I am just bursting into conversation. Of course you'd think this was weird. Some unknown girl used calling you up in the middle of the night. Oh, is it night where you are? It's always dark here, so I just presume it is everywhere. Yeah. It's night. A lucky guess. Well, I didn't really know who I was calling. I just pressed this emergency button on this pay phone on my end, and here I am talking with you. Wait, you said emergency? Are you okay? Do you need help? A little bit, yeah. What's wrong? I'm dead. My night just got interesting. Like, are you meaning the slang dash word dash Instagram dash hashtag dash Starbucks dash drinking dash white dash girl kind of dead from lols, or literally dead as in your heart has stopped beating? Huh, you're so funny. The second one, I am literally dead. I mean, I'd rather have went with the what are you wearing line, but a conversation with a D-eat girl is better than no conversation at all. So I played along. So what does being dead feel like? I've got to be honest with you. It's not great. It's obviously a bye. Tea cold, but my skin doesn't feel like ice. It feels like concrete, she said. Her voice lost its positivity. All my joints can move, but it feels like if I moved fast I'll start crumbling. It's also really hard to breathe, like I can breathe. But every breath is so small and sharp that I'm never satisfied. It always feels like it needs to be deeper, but my lungs just can't do it. Jesus, I was hoping for a bit of a joke answer, not an actual serious description. Anyway, how did you die? I slit my wrists in the bath, but I can't remember why I did it. I don't think I wan. Ted, to die, okay. I am even more flaccid than when this conversation began. Thanks for making my night slightly intriguing, but Pornhub awaits me. No, you can't go, and anger emanated from the receiver, which when I think about it should have been fear. And why is that? Because you can help me, and I can help you. What could I possibly get from a -1 girl apart from a couple years in a mental hospital for necrophilia? I can give you a message. Don't you want to hear from that couple you ran over and left to die? A lump the size of a heavyweight boxer's fist filled my throat. The moisture from my tongue disappeared, and the unnatural chill that first filled the phone box was replaced with a sauna level of nervous heat. Who the fuck is this? I managed to stutter. Don't be afraid. The dead just know things. They're here with me. They want you to know something. You fucking listen to me, you creepy little cunt. I don't know who this fucking is, but I'm going to find you and end you just like you did them. No one knew that. No one could possibly know that. I never told anyone about them. They're not mad that you didn't. Turn back and help them. They know you were scared and have been sad ever since. But they've got the secret to make you happy, Jamie. That's what you want, isn't it? To be happy, to not work lot. Nights and a greasy takeaway, bored out of your mind only to return home and jack yourself to sleep. I wanted so hard to put the phone down then, to run, to hide. But as frozen as I was with fear, the curious why grew in me. What if I really was in contact with the beyond? What if this mysterious phone box that maybe did just appear from nowhere did connect me with the other side? And if the dead did have the power to contact the living, what secrets could they bestow upon me? Where are you? Can we meet face to face and talk? You wouldn't like it here, Jamie. It's awfully cold and doesn't really make sense whatsoever. It's just a long crooked road with a dim light at the end, kind of like when the sun is just about to set over the horizon, except it's more red than a burning orange. But anyway, listen to me go on about the landscape of the afterlife like I have all the time in the world. You don't have all the time in the world, I asked, puzzled a boo. The rules of death. No, you see, you're my one phone call. My one phone call. That could bring me back to life. Bring you back to life? How would that work? All I need is some blood, jam, i.e., just a few drops of blood to replace some of mine that I lost when I took my own life. Clarice's voice had a sense of desperation about it now. I heard it in the obese people that came in the chicken shop ravaging with hunger, over-ordering as they bulged over the counter. So do I mail it to you? Go to the nearest pet cemetery? What's the process for this? Lady, just cut your hand open and put it to the receiver. I'll get it. Don't worry. And then you'll tell me the secrets. Yes, you'll know everything I know. I took my pocket knife from my work bag and ran it through my hand without hesitation and pressed my bleeding palm to the bottom of the phone, the pain not really bothering me due to the absurd situation that I was in. But catching a venereal disease from the sticky receiver did cross my mind. I held it there for 30 seconds, not really knowing how long it took for blood to seep through to wherever the hell this dead girl was, then brought it back to my ear. Hello? Did it get to you? Has it worked? A laugh arose through the line. It didn't sound like the dead girl. It didn't sound like anything I'd ever heard before. It was a mixture of hysterics and pure agony that sounded like it came from so many people, but it all joined together into this one choreographed barrel of shrill laughter. I haven't been completely truthful with you, Jamie, the deceased chick's voice said, now back to her normal tone, like that chorus of laughter never happened. I am dead, of course. That is not a lie. But there's no secrets I can tell you. You fucking bitch, I roared, embarrassed that I ever fell for such a bullshit idea. I dropped the phone, leaving it swinging as I went to push the door to exit the box. But it didn't budge. I put my shoulder into it, not caring if I smashed the glass in my efforts. But still nothing. I returned to the phone. What? How the hell do I get out of here? Aren't you wondering why I killed myself, Jamie? While I pondered her question, I noticed that the blood was still pouring from my hand, but instead of hitting the floor as gravity would intend it to, it was floating upwards towards the roof of the phone box to create an upside-down puddle of deep red. Well, after you killed my parents drunk driving, I was handed off to my uncle, who didn't treat me very nicely. Let's just put it that way. The children at school called me orphan girl. This teamed up with my so-called uncle's advances towards me didn't do any good for my mental health. I was feeling lightheaded. Now the blood was now gushing out of me like a vacuum cleaner was sucking it out. It was now slowly starting to cover the windows of the phone box, blocking my view of the outside world. That's why I decided to cut my wrists, but as I lost blood in the bath and my eyes started to flutter, I realized I didn't really want to die, which is when my parents met me on the other side. They wanted me to, live too, and they told me of a way I could live. The dead do really know things, Jamie. Oh, you're going to find it so interesting being dead, she exclaimed with a joy filling her voice. How can you live? I managed to whisper, my legs becoming weaker with every word I said. If I could find someone undeserving of life and willingly get them to offer blood to me to replace the blood that I lost, then I could return. My parents told me of you, how you knocked them over, how you were blind drunk, and left them to die while they were on vacation in your country. It was a tough call whether to bleed you or my rapist, Uncle Dry, but I figured I could take care of him once I'm back in my body. Because if you've taught me anything, Jamie, it's easy to get away with murder. I fell to the floor, only just clinging on to the phone. Clarice's voice had now disappeared, replaced with that choir of deafening laughter from beyond the grave, singing me to sleep. Yes, my eyes began to shut for the last time, surrounded by my own blood, which had now consumed the phone box completely. My breath got short. My skin felt hard as I found the slightest strength to open my eyelids. I saw a dim glow of light that was neither the rising or setting of the sun, but of something morbid that filled my known beating heart with a sinking lack of faith. I was dead. So here I am posting this story onto creepy pasta from the other side on my iPhone, because who really answers the phone anymore? I'm glad I've got your attention, because I tease true the dead do know things, and I know what you have done. I've gotten so lonely here on the dark road. But now that you've read this and I'm in your head, I can't wait for you to join me. After all, we deserve to be here. Be careful next time you cut yourself, because there's a chance it might not heal. See you real soon. Story 3, The Wireman. Last night I was derailed from seeing a movie by a pal of mine, Jay, who needed a ride to a barbecue with an invite as barter. Damn right I could see the movie another time. We arrive at Lindsay's house, where her roommates were all Rooney NG about organizing the contents of 11 empty grocery bags. Meat here, condiments there, booze here, etc. I'd noted to Lindsay that I liked her new home. It's much bigger, roomier, and safer than her previous one, to which she looked a little puzzled. You must be referring to the house on Nashville Street, because you never saw the other one. Lindsay's roommate Emily finished. So, you don't know the story of the place in between the place you knew us to live in and this one, right? Lindsay asked. I just stood there, curious of all the wide-eyed, uneasy looks, making myself wordlessly obvious that I'd not a clue. They called in the third roommate, Brienne, followed by Jay. They took turns adding in their 2 cents, confirming little details, adding others, to which they all agreed upon as the story progressed, rather than make this a back-and-forth story for people interjecting. I'll tell it to you third person. On Carrollton Avenue in New Orleans, Lindsay had parted with her previous roommate and got together with 2 girls from school she didn't know so well, Brienne and Emily, and got a decent place, the place in Q. Houston was rather roomy and a good location, and, above all, a hell of a bargain. This house, like most in the neighborhood, is nearly 100 years old. When Emily and Lindsay arrived to move their belongings in, they saw a note on the door of the furthest room from the front door. There was a note by Brienne saying that she'd already claimed it, which annoyed the other 2 girls, a blessing in disguise. Within the first week or 2, Brienne and the girls were all in the house together, Lindsay and Emily supposedly asleep, and Brienne up all night, determined to finish the book she was reading at somewhere between 2 to 4 a.m. She reached the last page of her text, closing the book, and settling into bed to see if she was tired enough to sleep just yet. Note that the book was not a mystery horror book, and that she had an elated feeling about what she'd just read. She was replacing the book back on the shelf and general before bed, tidying up, when the light above her started flickering, then went out. Brienne then turned off all the lamps around the room, leaving the one near her desk on. She soon found out she couldn't sleep, so she sat up again and turned on the television, putting in a cartoon DVD in the hope it'd tire her out before the sun came up. She heard a rapping on the wall and stood, not nigh if it came from her door or her wall. Brienne lowered the volume on the TV, fearing it woke up a roommate, and approached the corner of the room where the noise was coming from. It wasn't the door, or it wasn't the wall. It was coming from the closet. What Brienne didn't know at the time was that her deep closet shared a wall with Emily's equally deep closet, not Emily's wall. Brienne assumed it was Emily who was knocking, and crept back to bed in silence. Again, the rapping coursed through the room, so Brienne got up, exited the room, only to find Emily fast asleep in her own room, her body splayed nowhere near the wall in question. She checked on Lindsay, who was also fully asunder, her room too far for her to have knocked on the wall, to do so loud enough to gain Brienne's attention would have woken up the whole house. Confused and a little weirded out, Brienne returned to her room, closed the door, and turned off the TV and remaining lamps, and reached for the desk lamp, which turned off before she could hit the switch. She retreated her hand in surprise, and the light flickered on. She then reached forward again, and she successfully managed to turn it off, the desk lamp having given up on a life of its own. Suddenly, light flooded the room. The overhead light blasted into life. Perhaps it wasn't the bulb that broke, but simply a loose socket. Brienne, in the few seconds it took for her to turn around and head towards the light switch, became uneasy. Sure, it was scary, and the visual impact of the overhead light flickering like crazy was intimidating enough, but it wasn't without the realm of reason that this old house had loose bulbs, sockets, even wiring, to which she'd have a chat with the landlord about investigating. Before an inner wall fire could occur, Brienne consoled herself with such thoughts as she approached the light switch in the strobed room to finally turn it off and put an end to this ordeal for the night. However, she began to believe the strobing effect of the light flickering on and off maniacally was making her see things. Or not, for once she got to the light switch was been frantically flipping up and down on its own. She jumped back in panic as the strobing continued for a full few seconds, then suddenly stopped. Following a few moments later, in the darkness, was the knocking making a reappearance, but much, much louder than before. Brienne grabbed what she could and got the fuck out of there around 5 a.m., not only not looking back, but too scared to even inform the other girls of what went on. It took a long time for Brienne to be coaxed back into the house, since no strange events had occurred since, yet Brienne wasn't going anywhere near that room, so she slept elsewhere in the house. It was suggested that Brienne sleep on the second floor, since the weather was good, and the only reason it wasn't used was that the landlord had yet to repair the air conditioning and heating units up there. Brienne refused. As tall tale hauntings go, Brienne reasoned she was going to stay away from an attic as far as possible, despite the fact that all of the happenings occurred in the back bedroom that she once claimed weeks past, and Emily had some visitors come over on one occasion, and Lindsay had some of her own on another. Neath a group of visitors slept more than one night in that house, citing that they had strange dreams that they refused to discuss, and they had an unnatural apprehension from going down the lines past Emily's room. Lindsay decided to investigate a bit and entered Brienne's room during the day, finding nothing out of order. However, upon inspecting the closet where Brienne heard pounding noises, she discovered that not only did the back of the closet share a wall with the back of Emily's closet, there was a sizable hole cut out of it, enough for a child to pass back and forth. Upon even closer inspection, the wall was shared, yes, but was hollowed. There was 3 feet or more difference between the 2 panels in the back of the 2 closets. Lindsay shined a light on the little space and found a large spool of industrial wire. She turned the light upward toward the ceiling and discovered this little hollow went straight through the 2nd floor, and into the attic. She could see a large beam stretching across, far above. Lindsay kept this discovery to herself for a few days. A night or 2 later, Emily was looking rather haggard and explained that it was due to lack of sleep, since recurring nightmares kept jolting her out of slumber. The other 2 girls pressed on the contents of the dreams, the reslot of which, much to their shock, all 3 girls and 1 overnight guest had the same dream, as did the 2 previous guests when contacted and insisted upon the details. A very old, bald man was suspended above them from wires somehow attached to his back, reaching up into the blackness. His arms were slung down, locked at the elbow, as to reach as far down as he possibly could. His arms began as skin, muscle, and sinew, but gradually terminated into a cluster of wires. The wireman dangled above the dreamer, waving, scissoring his arms back and forth at locked length, as if trying to wipe past the faces of the star-told dreamer. Finally, the man would buckle, as if a few inches of slack was granted from above, and the wireman would immediately and eagerly grasp the sleepers' throats with its wire hideous and choke them vigorously. They could hear him smiling. The dreamer would suffer and die in the dreams before waking. The vast majority of these factors were shared with the dreamers without. Deviance, the profusely apologetic landlord, didn't question the girls' fright. Obviously, there's something he knew they didn't, and offered to send in an exorcist. Apparently, exorcists are few and far between, so the girls popped down to some of the very few reputable psychics that were marvelously expensive. She got 3 to come on half pay, half favor. Remember, this is New Orleans. Even I know of 1,000 psychics, but I only believe 3 or 4 of them. It should be noted that Lindsay was smart about this. She didn't mention anything about the room, dreams, or actual locate of the house, and should the psychics wish to investigate before they come to the site, Lindsay convinced them to accept the job with as very little info as possible. And all the girls were their way, and the psychics showed up, offering them nothing but listening to everything. The psychics entered the house and all of its rooms, feeling nothing, until they got to the last room of the hall, where all 3 of them looked at each other in discomfort. One began crying. They backed out of the room. Lindsay took them into Emily's room and showed them the little room between the closets, obviously from the safe side, and directed their attention upward. Soon after, the band of explorers would find themselves in the dreaded attic, and had found the crossbeam in question. It had a deeply etched groove of wear from a one-stout wire, and was indeed centered directly above that little hole. The psychics soon joined the girls in the living room and discus, said what they felt. Apparently, a long time ago, a woman had run off from her husband and little boy. The husband refused to let the child go outside, thinking that he'd run off, and the only way the mother would return was if the child was there. She'd surely not come back if it were just the father. One day, tired of the wait, the father locked his son in his bedroom, and Ng himself with wire, were not 100% certain, in the little room, not 100% certain until, of course, he'd die, assuming that the mother would soon come for the son. She didn't. The little boy died of dehydration in his room. While this didn't explain a good half of what went on, the psychic went on to say, well, there was some sort of torture, perhaps self-torture, but I don't know if it preceded the man and his bow, or if it involved the man and his bow. We threw down many tarot cards, and, despite the meaning of the hanged man that we all accept, it came up every damn hand. We used 108 cards. It came up every 3 cards after a thorough reshuffle. I think it's demanding a new meaning, perhaps an obvious one. We don't know. We don't normally do this, but certai and impressions are undeniable. The landlord offered a second property, bigger, better, and cheaper, to which the girls took and presently live. The girls, when they think of it, did a little investigating, and here's what they came up with. One neighbors had seen 6 sets of tenants come and go in the last 2 years alone. To their pal, Brian, who had several nervous breakdowns including crying in CLA, SS, and walking around bug-eye in the year previous, turned out having lived in that very house, in that very room for 6 months. Brian was mortified when the girls admitted they stayed there, and recalled the wireman dream with eerie clarity and description. Apparently his state has improved in the time he's been out of that house. 3. The house is currently unoccupied. Story 4. Windows. I never used to frequent bars, at least not as much as I do now, with no job, no family, no nothing to return to, save for a bottle and an ashtray. I couldn't find anywhere else to waste time. I don't do much else besides mull myself around a bar stool while squeezing a glass of something that burns less coming up than it did going down. There isn't much left for me to do. Thirsta. Why night 2 months ago, I sat on the second stool on the right hand of the counter, watching little brown bubbles pop in the center of my drink. Somewhere to my left, the air conditioner reminded everyone in the room that it needed to be repaired while a stout fan pushed hot air up and under my shirt. The bartender dragged his soot-stained dishcloth across the counter, smearing cigarette ash against tea. There were about 15 people in the bar that night, not enough people to cause trouble, but just enough to keep the quiet buried beneath the floor tiles. The liquid in my glass vibrated as the door behind me opened. A bell chimed, and I heard the patter of old boots on older tile as someone new came in. I didn't recognize him. He took up the stool beside mine, in my left, but I didn't feel him. The spot felt just as empty as it did before he came in, hunched over the countertop like a wet sheet of paper. The man didn't so much as blink at anybody besides the bartender. He had scruff on his jaw, no shine in his eye, and his hair looked like the wool on a dead lamb. He didn't look like he wanted company, so I knocked back the rest of my drink and cared for another, ignoring him altogether. I didn't have any intention of talking to that guy, but apparently he wanted to talk to me. I might have thought he just wanted to mull over his own issues by himself, but he made it clear that he had baggage he wanted off his chest by just looking over at me. "You live here long?" His voice was even like pavement, a dry thud as he put his empty glass down on the counter. I didn't answer until the bartender refilled both of our drinks. "A couple years, you—" Someone was smoking a cig somewhere in the room. The smoke made lights look runny. He shook his head, downing half his drink before speaking. "You ever see anything so jack shit fucked up that you just got no choice but to go along with it?" I heard a laugh and a cough pass between my teeth. I nodded, taking the rim of my glass to my lips. "How did you handle it?" he asked. His leather jacket was glowing orange in the light. I dipped my head down a bit. "Tacky. NG, a swig out of my glass. Not very well. Couldn't work. Couldn't eat. Forgot about sleep. Some shit just makes the world stop turning." My voice faded as I thought back a couple years. He was staring straight into the counter. At this point, his glass was just a glass, his eyes weak and unable to refocus. I slowly drained my own glass, waiting for him to say something. "Mind if I tell you a bit of what had happened?" He glanced at me, a look so brief I might have imagined it. "Shoot." I ran the tip of my thumb over the lip of the glass. Wondering if I was sober enough to listen, he let out a deep breath, resting his weight against his forearms on the counter. His breath made the smoky air swirl around our faces. The air conditioner clunked like a passing train while he composed himself. "I am pretty new here. I haven't been in town for more than about 6 months. I was out of a job where I was last, so I decided to relocate after finding listing over here. I moved into this small bungalow down by the university. It was in a good area, with good people who mowed their lawns and didn't leave beer bottles on my driveway, so I took the place and settled in. The bungalow and was pretty simple. It had 1 level, 1 bedroom, a bathroom, a kitchen, and all that. There were a lot of windows by the back in the kitchen, and there was this really big, nice picture window in the living room at the front that showed a bit of the lawn and the whole sidewalk down the street. I saw him pause to toss back the rest of his drink. He resumed his speech while the bartender came over, poured him another. Things were great. During the first few weeks, the job was steady. No issues with the electricity or water. He stopped again, and when I looked over him, his hands were clenched tight around the glass like it was the only thing reminding him where he was. Fast forward a few weeks, and I started to notice one of my neighbors. From the moment I first saw him, I probably should have considered moving out, but I didn't have enough money on me to get another place so soon after getting the one I had. This guy was average looking, wearing jeans and a plain shirt. Standing on the sidewalk down from my house, I saw him through that big window by the front of my house. Wondering why in God's name I could see through him, I coughed as a dribble of my drink slid down the wrong pipe. "You what?" The guy was half transparent or some shit, and I don't know why the hell that didn't freak me out enough to leave. He bent his head over his now empty glass as the bartender came around to refill it. By this point, I noticed that a fair number of people had gathered around us. Their eyes were watery with interest, but none of them spoke up to urge the man beside me to continue speaking. So after I saw that guy for the first time, I remember staring at him for a bit, thinking that, okay, Maybe he's just curious. Maybe he was shy. Maybe he was actually a concerned neighbor. And so I went outside to see him. Imagine my surprise when I get outside and find the sidewalk empty. There were leaves and grass clippings, but no guy. I thought I was crazy. I thought I was seeing things. So I went back inside and got dressed for work. I thought if I just went on like it didn't happen, it wouldn't happen. And again, his glass was empty again. But it did happen again. It happened every day that week, and the next week, and the week after that. I went outside to find him for the first week and a bit. But after that I realized that I wouldn't ever find him out there. It didn't make sense, so I just went to work. But it got real bad real quick after the first few days. He stopped talking just to look me in the eye, completely ignoring the small circle of people that had formed around us. Every day that fucker got closer and closer to the window. At first he stayed on the sidewalk, but then he moved onto my lawn, coming just a little bit closer. Every day his clothes never changed, and that was why I was certain that he wasn't real. There was no way he could be real. Deep blinds installed, but I couldn't close them because I had to know how much time I had before he made it to the window. I thought if he got to the window and I didn't see it, I don't know what I thought. I just needed to know where he was at all times. By then I convinced myself that I was crazy, that I had somehow bought the only haunted house in the whole area, ghost and all. I done. No, I knew I'd made a mistake, but I had absolutely nowhere to go, and I still hadn't saved up enough to rent out an apartment I'd found just 10 minutes away from my workplace. He stopped, paid to swirl his drink around his glass, his eyebrows raising as he took in the growing crowd of drunks. People were murmuring to each other, but he looked like he didn't hear it. He probably did. But I felt like he needed to pretend he was just talking to me. When he was just about 6 feet from that window, I started smelling his really nasty, rotten smell, like someone left out spoiled meat and eggs. His voice had gotten softer. The next day, he was 5 feet away, and I couldn't see his feet or much of his calves anymore. The smell was worse, and even my coworkers were starting to notice it when I got to work. His eyes were staring straight ahead at the racks of beer and scotch along the wall opposite of where we sat. When he spoke again, his voice was so quiet that I had to hold my breath to hear him. Then he was 4 feet away, and I couldn't see his legs at all. I remember sweating because I just didn't get it, and I brought my hand to my forehead to wipe away the sweat. I leaned back when I did because I was shifting my weight onto my other foot, and as I did, my reflection appeared in the glass of the window, and then it all made sense. He didn't need to continue. I don't think anyone would have made him if he didn't want to, but he needed to say it. I could see it in his deflated cheeks that he needed to say it. That entire time, I hadn't been seeing a ghost coming closer to my house. I'd been seeing the reflection of a man coming closer to me inside of my own goddamn home. When I realized what was actually going on, I turned around as quickly as I could and I jumped that fucker. I knocked him to the floor and beat him down until I was sure he'd stay still long enough for me to call the cops. Everyone in the bar was sitting close enough to hear. Nobody blinked. Nobody moved so much as to cause even the thought of a nose. He finished off the last of his drink and shooed away the bartender who tried tea. Oh, fill it once again. The cops cuffed him and took him away, and I never saw him again. No one knew who he was. The cops said he was homeless and had been rooming in one of my closets or some s. Hit. I guess it doesn't matter too much. He spun around in his stool to face his audience, all the while making sure to look over at me every now and again. It's been about a month since I moved out of that place and into that other apartment I was talking about. It's nicer there, fewer windows, no homeless creeps. I probably should have done a better job of scoping the bungalow out initially, or just gotten the hell out of there the day I noticed that guy. He paused to make eye contact with every single person in attendance. I'm not really sure there's anything more I need to say other than to do yourself a favor and make sure you don't fuck up as bad as I did. He turned to look at me. The end. Applause followed his words, chasing them into my memory so I never forget his words. It's been 2 months since that night, and I decided to take my new car out for a drive. My new job paid for it, and my new girlfriend made sure that I treated it as well as I treated her before. I knew where I was headed. I ended up by the university, cruising through the family-friendly streets lined with sprinklers and flower beds. On my right was a line of homes, bungalows, most of them occupied, except for a few. As I drove past them, I noticed this one particular home with a great picture window right at the front of the house. Sunlight created a streak of brightness against the glass, but even through the glare I could make out the shape of a man's head, shoulders, and chest, and a pair of hands pressed to the window. I blinked and the image disappeared. I left the neighborhood and drove straight home, calling my girlfriend on the way to let her know that I was going to need a drink when I got home. Like I told that man months ago, some shit just makes the W. World stop turning. Story 5, Mr. Teeth. People sometimes ask me what my first memory is. Invariably I lie, because I'm prone to avoid the explanation that comes with the truth. Maybe from now on, if someone casually asks me, what is your first memory, I will reach into my bag where there will be copies of this story, and I will just hand one over. As they read it, their face will morph from confusion into the furrowed brow of concern, and finally into the drop-jawed bewilderment that accompanies real fear. In passing, I tell people that my first memory was of me standing on a stool in front of my kitchen window. It was just after dusk in winter, and from where I stood I could make out the black limbs of the skeletal beech tree that loomed from across the driveway. While that is indeed a real memory, it's not the first one. If you want to hear about that, here it is. There was an unfortunate series of incidences that happened in the town where I grew up during the summer of 1989. By incidences, I mean murders. I'm not talking about your run-of-the-mill bar brawl gone too far, or an act of passionate revenge. No, the events that happened in Middleton were far more grotesque, even more so because the victims were children. I don't remember the heat wave that had swept Middleton that summer, the pink droplets of melt-hit ice cream on the simmering pavement, or old men reclined in overstuffed chairs in shady living rooms. These precious details were told to me through family members and friends of my parentage. They all, to this day, say that it was the hottest summer they have ever lived through. To make the weather even more unbearable, There were weekly brownouts that year due to some oversights at the electric plant in Salem. As a result, homes and businesses would go for hours at a time without air conditioning. Popsicles were promptly sold out in every business afternoon. Magazines, and newspapers weren't read that summer. They were bought to be used as makeshift fans. It seemed that the only place where air conditioning still remained during these outages was the car. I've been told by relatives that it was not uncommon during that summer to find neighbors lounging back in their parked cars with the windows up, drinking a beer and listening to the radio. At times it was the only escape from the unbearable humidity and heat. That's why when mothers would go shopping, it became impossible to pull their children from their cars. After all, the kids knew that the inside of whatever clothing or grocery store their mother had taken them to was probably as hot, if not hotter, than the parking lot. The coolest and best place to be was in the car, with the windows rolled up and that gentle whispering wind seeping through the vents. With this setting in mind, you can understand how Mr. Teeth, as he was later called by newspapers, had his pick of the litter. So to speak, he knew that in any given lot outside of a busy grocery or department store, there would be at least 2 or 3 cars where the children had been left inside. One such car was parked outside of the Market Basket on the afternoon of June 3rd. Within sat Jeremy Agger, a freckled 8-year-old with a penchant for action figures. When Jeremy's mother returned from a quick dash for butter, she found the back right door of the vehicle ajar, a Darth Vader doll left abandoned on the back seat. News of the disappearance radiated through the town over the following week up until the day when a jogger noticed a small black rebec laying in the grass on the edge of the reservoir. Not long afterward, Jeremy's body was pulled from the brown water and as EMT to the morgue. It was there that doctors noted what appeared to be bite marks on the boy's arms and neck. Victim number 2 was Amanda DeMiller, a girl of 7 who had fallen asleep on a way home from shopping with her mother on July 18th. As was common in those days, a parent might leave their sleeping child in the car once at home. Britta DeMiller, Amanda's mother, later told police that with the house being as hot as it was, she had thought that Amanda would sleep better in the car with the sliding side door left open. At some point, Mrs. DeMiller looked out the window to see that Amanda was no longer in her seat. The family lived on a fairly wooded road leading into the forest of Middleton. Neighbors were widely separated from one another. Mr. and Mrs. DeMiller spent all of that night scouring the narrow back roads, knocking on the doors of the occasional houses. After only a 3-day search, a local boy found Amanda's body slumped in the corner of his tree house. Her throat was purple from strangulation and covered with bite marks. Her shoes were on the wrong feet. Anyway, that's how the story goes. That brings us to my first memory. My parents have since placed the date of this memory to around the 3rd or 4th week of August. It had been about a month since Amanda DeMiller's murder, but no one had been apprehended. People in town were still on edge. It was at that time, one afternoon, when I sat in the front seat of my mom's rusty Toyota parked in the giant lot of Henry's grocery store. I remember that. There was a car parked on either side of my mother's, and in front of the Toyota was one of those corrals for shopping carts. There was music playing quietly on the radio, Madonna maybe, and my hands were stiff. Why, from eating candy. You may wonder how. With all of the horrors that had plagued Middleton that summer, My mother could have left me alone in the car. The fact is, she hadn't. My older brother, Stephen, aged 12 at the time, had been designated as my temporary guardian, while she made an emergency stop for flour. It was this temporary guardian who decided that this was the perfect opportunity to run to the bookstore nearby to buy a deck of collectible cards before he dashed out of the back seat. I remember him saying something like, "Don't go anywhere." So there I sat, waiting for one or both of my family members to return. It was then that I saw him, and it's this part which is clear even to this day. The halogen lamps had just come on all across the lot. They cast that greenish glow from just being turned on. The sky beyond the pines that bordered the market was streaked with pink and purple. It must have been around 7:30. I remember first seeing him standing there some 30 feet from the front of our car. Almost instantly, the music from the radio faded from my ears, along with the sharp rattle of carriage wheels on the old pavement. Transfixed. Silent, I stared out the windshield at this lanky, gaunt figure framed by pink and purple sky. Through a curtain of greasy black hair falling across his brow, I discerned a single iris, aimed to sort of take on the green glow of those halogen lights. He tilted his head back a bit, and the hint of a smile danced across his thin lips. He must have stood and stared through the windshield at me, transfixed and spellbound as I was, for one whole minute. He then started a slow walk over to my side of the car, never taking his eye from mine. Once he was outside my door, he looked down his long beak-like nose at me. Then, looking around, he began to wiggle the handle. "Open up," he said, looking down at me again. I just stared at him without saying anything. Again, "Open up." His long skeletal fingers left the door handle and started to dance across my window, tapping here and there. He crouched down so that he was at my level and started a sort of puppet show with his hands. His dirty fingers dashed across the glass like great pale spiders in a deadly battle. He looked at them and laughed, making hissing and growling sounds as he made these sounds. His mouth opened up into a full grin, and I had a look inside that rows of long yellow teeth. They are, to this day, the longest and largest teeth I've ever seen. There were gaps between them, and they reminded me vaguely of dirty piano keys. He seemed to be completely immersed in his spider battle, giggling and clawing at each of his hands. At one point, he noticed that my window was open just a crack at the top. He looked at me, grinning with those mighty teeth, and crawled one of his hand spiders up to the space. I was openly sobbing. At this point, he managed to squeeze tips of 4 fingers through the opening. I caught a greasy whiff of unwashed clothes mingled with the sweet scent of blood. "Come on, open up," he said, in a whiny, eating voice. "Open up," he said this same sentence in a dozen different voices, from a girly voice to a thick lumberjack one. By sheer luck, the woman, who was parked on the passenger side of our car, returned all 4 of her noisy kids in tow. Upon seeing her, the man scurried off and a duck walked towards the cart corral, where he smoothly stood up straight and walked off into the parking lot, but not before looking over his shoulder, gnashing those massive teeth and catching me with one final blood-chilling stare. The memory ends there. It was later explained to me that my brother had returned to he car to find me crying hysterically. No matter what he said to calm me through the glass Apparently, I wouldn't unlock the doors. My mother returned soon after. She said that all I could manage to say through thick sobs was, "There was a man." I just kept repeating it for hours after that. There was a man, like the insufferable heat. So, too, did the Middleton murders come to an end with the changing of the seasons. Just 2 weeks after my parking lot encounter, the child killer, who was later identified as Raymond Sandler, age 29, was caught after taking a young girl from a birthday party at a roller rink in Beverly. A worker on his coffee break at the adjacent gas station saw a thin man lead the girl out the back door of the rink and attempt to race her into a red car. The worker called the cops, and the car was pulled over on Route 128 just outside of Gloucester. While I don't remember it, I first made the connection between the man in the parking lot and Mr. Teeth by seeing my father's newspaper on the coffee table the day after Sandler's capture. There, in a large blown-up black and white, was the same ghastly face I seen just inches from mine, with only a layer of glass separating us. Apparently, I didn't make it to school the day I saw that newspaper on account of I couldn't stop screaming, knowing I had almost been a victim myself. My family and people around Middleton weren't willing to tell me anything about the killer once I grew curious years later. I suppose they didn't want to eke me out more than I already was. So, in high school, I did some of my own research. I learned that the Boston Globe had first coined the nickname Mr. Teeth, both on account of Sandler's unusually large incisors and his habit of biting the skin of his victims. His means of killing was almost exclusively strangulation. Due to his being diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, Sandler was often delusional. As a result, his story regularly changed. However, after being asked several times the number of murders he confessed to, while varying, never went above 10. It was also noted in research on Sandler that he only hunted in the summertime. Some speculated that this was because of the easy access to children who had been left in cool cars. Other parents went into shop. Others suggested that the hot weather triggered something inside of Sandler, something that lay dormant during the fall and winter, then awoke once the temperature hit 80. Who can say the years have? He softened that first memory a bit. I'm almost 40 now, and while that hideous grin isn't quite as distinct as it used to be, I still see it sometimes when I wake up at night, usually in the warmer months. Someday, one of my 2 girls who know nothing of the summer of '89 may ask when they're older, "Hey, Dad, what's your first memory?" Maybe I'll tell them about the time I was on the stool in my kitchen looking out at the old beech tree. Or maybe I'll just say, "Teeth, I remember teeth." Story 6. On floating bodies. Whenever Gideon said something like this is going to be fucking awesome, the end result was inevitably disaster. But that was okay. Aidan loved disaster. So when Gideon showed up on that gleaming summer Thursday morning and asked if he wanted to do something, Aidan immediately said yes. The repetitive buzzing hum of the Arizona suburbs bothered him less, and the boring reenactments of days prior were brokered with the faint licitness of Gideon's minor transgressions. "Where are we headed?" Aidan asked, forgetfully adding "bitch" at the end of his question. Their skateboards rattled past the identical houses. The mailboxes tried out extras for the persistence of memory in the morning sun. swimming pools. Gideon didn't look around at all, just stared straight ahead at the indistinct scenery. Dude, fuck, you didn't say something. I don't just wear bathing suits under my shorts. We aren't swimming. Then what about pools? Gideon did a kick stop and then skated off faster than Eden could, without looking to see if he was following, without saying anything. God hate you, dude, he sped up, chasing his friend's rapidly disappearing frame. They rode to the bus stop. When the bus came, late and already crowded, they shuffled in, slipping in between the crowd to maneuver to the back. Fucking hate riding the bus, man, mumble Adon, who. It was better before the route got slashed to save money. They blame it on unions and pensions, but that's not it. It's this economy, man. It's not the economy. Everybody says that. Like these bus driver pensions are went to bankrupt the whole world because retired bus drivers live a life of unimaginable luxury, right? Laughed Adon. Dudes drove buses for like 30 years. Buses for 30 years, and then they retire, and then the company starts complaining about their pensions. Dude, they knew how much the pension was going to cost, and so did the bus drivers. That's why they were bus drivers. This economy, though, hate it when people say that. Because the economy got messed up, we should be fine with no pensions, no savings, no security, no jobs, because why? Were those gifts, and we should have been grateful, but the fucking rich white dudes on top. No offense, none taken. Adon's dad owned a construction business, which had done quite well into the housing boom. Now it was slowly going bankrupt and bleeding out. Most nights he fell asleep to the sounds of his dad's beer cans opening. They sounded like gunshots, or maybe distant storms. They stayed just as rich. Fuck that. The bus lurched out of a red light. Gideon looked around our stop. Corner of Marx and Lenin, intersection of Icepick and Trotsky. He reached across the aisle and pulled T. He signaled. Dang, they had drifted into another section of suburbs. It looked exactly the same, the comfort of strangers' subdivisions. Street cars named Paxil. Now where, he asked, left for like 5 minutes. They rode in silence, cars roaring past them. The sun continued rising. They had turned down Elmore Avenue, with its no outlet sign and neighborhood sign. Shepperton Estates and Gideon pulled up on his skateboard. Before the two of them was a long, blank street of identical houses. This motherfucker, this is what we are doing today. Every single house on this block was foreclosed, and every single one has a completely empty swimming pool. The houses stood open and abandoned. Some had for sale signs still crooked in the glaring light. Others had just given up, with dead front yards and empty driveways. They all have pools. When the fuck did everyone think they were rich enough to buy pools? Middle-class people got all fucked up on some crazy bullshit and thought they were nouveau rich and shit. I saw this on some skate site. Dudes are going around the country mapping abandoned areas. There are places in California where you can skate through like 20 miles of pools. Fuck yeah. Great Recession, right? One other thing, they were skulking up the one driveway of the first house on the right. Hayden kept looking around as if some crazy W was going to come out screaming to get off his lawn, but no. This was an ultra-modern boom town. After the boom, this was where the ghosts lived. In one of these houses, the whole family killed themselves. Rather than leave the house, they were all found in the pool. Oh, so there's that. They had waked into the first backyard. Everything was desolate, yet almost seemed like it was paused, like if someone hit a button, life would start again. But things weren't paused. Things were stopped. There's that. They skated through the swimming pools, gloriously empty. They jumped fences and ducked into unlocked tack doors. They ran laughing through wrecked McMansions, walls ripped up from copper wiring being ripped out. They threw rocks into windows and heard the glass ing back symphonies of subprime hymns. At the fifth house, the terminal point of the cul-de-sac, the rain came without warning. Raindrops like tiny wet bullets hit their still-breathing bodies. They rushed from the edge of the drained swimming pool to the shelter of the overhang. "Dude, I didn't think it was supposed to rain," Adon asked. Gideon had already pulled out his phone, staring intently into its screen. "No, it says no rain for the rest of the week. It might be wrong, I know, but look." He held out his phone. "It doesn't even say it's raining now." They watched the rain pelt the patio. Storms in the desert come on suddenly and seem to threaten to annihilate the entire world with their veracity. And then they vanish, never to be seen again. Adon heard a sound over the rain and saw Gideon opening the sliding glass patio doors. He stood outside and listened to the splashing, and then heard Gideon call for him to come the fuck in. Immediately, he came in and stopped. Fook. The interior of the home was untouched, completely furnished. The kitchen fruit bowls teemed with apples and bananas and avocados and oranges. The refrigerator was open. All the shelves were filled with perishable food items, cruelty-free eggs and grass-fed beef and almond milk. Pictures on the wall, a happy family, smiling dad, smiling kids, smiling mom. "I thought these were empty. They are." The panic twisted Gideon's voice until his sentence rose almost an octave. "That site said this shit is empty. I think the site might not be completely right here, man." He was trying to keep his voice down, but he still half-shouted. He and Gideon were arrested last year when the cops found them smoking pot in the mall parking lot. They were both on probation. Things had been so awkward. The real world of judges, lawyers, and probation officers pressed down with an unbelievable precision against his chest. "We have to get out, man. Somebody is obviously living here. We're breaking and entering." "No, look, man." Was Gideon pulling out his phone? Was he launching so far? "At a time like this, let me show you." Thud. "Oh my God," Adon whispered. Thud, thud, thud. "Someone is upstairs. Let's get the fuck out." He turned and ran to the sliding glass door, which was now closed and locked. He could see the pool from where he was. It wasn't empty anymore. The raindrops pounded into the shimmering water of the somehow full pool. Adirondack chairs with beach towels over the back encircled the pool. The towels had flamingos on them. "Can you fucking not be fucking intellectually disabled?" Gideon's little sister had Downs, and he was hypersensitive about the R-word, about this shit. "Open it." Thud, 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 thud. The nose was coming to the staircase. "Not opening," he hissed. "Not opening." Gideon pushed him aside. and grabbed the door. Nothing happened. The door stayed closed. The first stair croaked and groaned and creaked. Thud, fuck. Gideon ran into the kitchen and grabbed a stool and hurled it at the door. Aidan covered his face, and the stool bounced back and clattered on the tile floor. Fuck, Gideon said. Oh. And a body bounced down the staircase. Oh my God. The body barely resembled a body. An essential part of its identifiable humanity was missing. In the same way deer on the side of road go from obviously being a dead deer on the side of the road to becoming increasingly swollen, distorted, and then, finally, an unrecognizable burst. Red thing beside the median strip, a violet trace of history. The body was wearing a blue dress with red flowers on it. It had been dead for a long time. Water poured out its mouth and ears, and the holes that used to be eyes. The water spread out and touched the stool, which still rattled. Thump, Jesus, 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 Jesus. Aidan couldn't tell if that was him or Gideon. Maybe it was both. Maybe it was something else speaking. Another body clattered down the stairs, and then another, then, finally, another. All were swollen and discolored as if they had been underwater too long. He stared at a hand of one of the smaller bodies, the way the fingers were so wrinkled that it looked like a twisted up and dead gray flower petal, and then the flower bloom. The hand moved. The body stood up, hesitantly, awkwardly, like a tourist in the subway, unsure of where to walk or perhaps even how the thing moved. Side to side, fetid waters gurgled out from its feet. It pushed limp and wet blonde hair, matted and foul-smelling, away from its face. Whatever it used to be, it had long stopped being. The OT. Her three bodies had risen. They leaked and squelched and moved with a hideous slowness. Aidan lost all sense of himself. He couldn't turn and look at Gideon. Was he even alive anymore? Had he hit his head and bled out in an empty pool? Was this hell? Was this a desperate hallucination in his dying brain? The drowned things surged all at once, as if they had lashed onto a secret undertow and were being pulled by an invisible ocean. The bodies smelled of drowned cities and flooded worlds. They smelled of forgotten wet horrors. The father thing brushed against him. He could smell it. He was touching it. The father thing's body was full of water and collapsed with contact, like blackened and rotten fruit. It groaned. Water ran from his toothless mouth, down his ruined and twisted neck and onto Aidan's vans. Somehow the door had opened, and they left the house and walked out past Gideon and Aidan and onto the patio. Watery trails followed them. The 2W hatched from the kitchen in the shadow of the stainless steel refrigerator. In the valley of the Viking Range, in the bosom of the god of the material world, as the parade of the dead reached the pool. At the edge of the pool, the malformed pressed mutilated arms against deformed stubs. They stepped down slowly into the shallow end, and they began to make the terrible noise, the nose pay, penetrated into the house and reverberated in Aidan's ears. It was the sound of guilt, of hunger, horror, fear, revulsion, and nausea at the world, at their imitation of existence, the screaming sound, like something Aidan had heard before, but he couldn't remember. He couldn't remember anything. They walked into the water. The screams grew louder. The raindrops pounded into their faces, their cheeks, chunks ripped off and splashed into the shallows, and then Aidan saw the change. The deeper they went into the water, the more the decay faded from them. The boy had eyes again, instead of holes. The mother's lips turned red from gray. The father's torn and flooded clothes resembled khakis, an Oxford shirt. The girl was suddenly awkward and tall and possessor of an immense and awful sadness that there was never to be anything else. The family moved into the pool, and the waters rose into them. The waters poured into their open mouths. The screaming stopped as their mouths filled, and they sank. Their arms and legs kicked, even after minutes under water. The parents held the children down when they tried to swim away, and then nothing. Bubbles stopped escaping and their mouths. The screaming. Hayden finally recognized the screaming. It was the same noise he would make in his dreams. The dreams he always forgot about upon waking. The dreams where he died. The rain had stopped, like it had never been. The patio was dry and glimmered in the desert heat. The pool was empty, as drained as it had been before. The family was gone. Aidan finally looked at Gideon. Gideon was crying, and he realized, surprised, that he was too. "Let's get the fuck out of here. Fuck this forever." Gideon's words echoed over the broken tiles, through the empty house with its broken windows and cracked doors and giant aching holes on the walls where pictures should be of happy families smiling for the camera. Story 7. Lavender Town Syndrome. Lavender Town, as seen in red and green. The Lavender Town Syndrome, also known as Lavender Town Tone or Lavender Town Suicides, was a peak in suicides and illness of children between the ages of 7 to 12 shortly after the release of Pokemon Red and Green in Japan, back in February 27, 1996. Rumors say that these suicides and illness only occurred after the children playing the game reached Lavender Town. Watt Hour O's theme music had extremely high frequencies. That studies showed that only children and young teens can hear, since their ears are more sensitive. Due to the lavender tone, at least 200 children supposedly committed suicide, and many more developed illnesses and afflictions. The children who committed suicide usually did so by hanging or jumping from heights. Those who did an OT act irrationally complained of severe headaches after listening to Lavender Town's theme. Although Lavender Town now sounds differently depending on the game, this mass hysteria was housed by the first Pokemon game released. After the Lavender Tone incident, the programmers had fixed Lavender Town's theme music to be at a lower frequency, and since then children were no longer affected by it. One video appeared in 2010 using special software to analyze the audio of Lavender Town's music. When played, the software created images of the unknown near the end of the audio. This raised a controversy since the unknown didn't appear until the Generation 2 games, Silver, Gold, and Crystal. The unknown translate to leave now. There is also the said beta version of Lavender Town. It is said that the beta version of Pocket Monsters was released to some kids to test the games. This is the video of the beta version of Lavender Town.